All right, happy Thursday. Hopefully, everyone is doing great out there. I'm sure there's a lot of disappointed Detroit Pistons fans who thought you were going back to New York for a game seven. You know what's funny? The Pistons, well, I don't know, it's probably not funny. They remind me of a lot of the 2013-14 version of the Toronto Raptors, who, while in New Jersey or while in Brooklyn, we played them in the playoffs and won based on just a Paul Pierce fingertip block of Kyle Lowry. And although this team did not get to a game seven, I think it reminds me a lot of as far as kind of how this roster is built. Certainly, Toronto wasn't on those hard times, but I do see a lot of similarities here. I tweeted this, and this is the beauty of Twitter and how many crazies are out there on that site, the dark web, I call it. It was a terrific season in Detroit, and they should not be ashamed of anything. I know how it ended down the stretch. You could say that for Milwaukee. You could say it for a lot of teams. And I think for Detroit, everything is kind of about a learning curve for what happens next. So you 44 wins. You have tripled your win total from a year ago, which is remarkable. You have the second round pick 37. That's from Toronto. So basically, almost a late first. Your first is going to Minnesota. That was from a trade in 2020. I believe it was the Christian Wood trade that first kept on getting passed around and wound up in New York, and then it went to Minnesota in the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. So you have no first round pick, which is fine. You have all your picks going forward. I think it's the first time since 2020. You can trade up to four. As I said, this story is terrific. I remember being away when the losing streak was going on, and they were the laughing stock of the league. And I do think it's something where if you are a rebuilding team and you put the right pieces around your franchise player, which they do have in Cade Cunningham, you can turn it around pretty quickly. You got to hit on some moves, and Tim Hardaway Jr. trade, signing Tobias Harris to a really nice contract. I thought it was a bad deal because it's like who you bidding against with him. That turned out nice. Malik Beasley signing, and these are your free agents right now. You got Beasley for 1 year, $6 million. Dennis Schroeder trade at the deadline from Utah. All those players, those veteran players, complemented Cade Cunningham and Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey, who I wound up getting hurt, who eventually will be back. Your core is there. Ron Holland, who didn't play much, Marcus Sasser, Isaiah Stewart, who is hurt. But there are nice pieces there with this roster here. And they have an identity. I said I felt bad when I tweeted this because I said JB Bickerstaff, and he's a heck of a coach, man. I said he's like that crazy uncle that comes to Christmas, or that your uncle at Christmas dinner who just kind of sits in the corner and just complains. And so he does wear on you a little bit here, but man, does he get the most out of rosters. And they've got a defensive identity of who he is and who they are. And similar to where Houston is, they fit the identity of their head coach. Cade is going to hit all NBA, and there's going to be some financial ramifications there. It's going to be similar to what happened with Evan Mobley, who won Defensive Player of the Year. It's about a $45 million cap hit total. His number is going to go from 224 to 269. They made a strong priority to complement Cunningham with 3-point shooting. They went from last to 17th. I know it's like, wow, big deal, 17th. But you could see the difference there. Now, how do you build off this momentum, right? Cunningham, Duren, Thompson, Ivy, all in the contract next year. But you have decision with your veterans. Schroeder, Beasley, Hardaway Jr. How much do you rely on continuity? I always go back to that Atlanta team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals and lost to Philadelphia, I think in 6 games. No, they lost to Milwaukee in 5 or 6. They beat Philadelphia. Excuse me. That was the Ben Simmons game where he was afraid to shoot a layup. I always go back to that Atlanta team, and I remember writing about it, and I said, "Bring this group back, like run it back," and they did. And then I remember Travis Schlenk, who was their GM, and basically said, like, we made a mistake. It was a little bit of fool's gold. So now you have to decide as far as if it's fool's gold or you run this group back. You have early bird rights on Schroeder. You can bring him back. You have you have bird rights on Hardaway Jr. You can bring him back. Malik Beasley is an interesting study, and we're going to talk about him in a minute because of his contract. You have non-bird rights, and we're going to explain that in a minute. Your cap space is going to be interesting. It's going to likely shrink. So if Cade hits All NBA, you will see that $28 million number go down to $19 million in cap space. And then it's like, well, do we act as a team over the cap? And if we do, we'll have our non-taxman level exception, which is at $14 million, and our biannual, which is at 5 and change. Or do we act as a team under the cap? So what does under the cap mean? Basically, you would have to renounce all your free agents, and that would put you at, excuse me, God, I got this like cough, roughly $19 million, and you would have your room mid-level exception. So basically $27 million in spending. If you want to act, as I said, over the cap, you can still bring back Hardaway and Schroeder because you've got early bird and bird rights that allows you to exceed the cap. And then you can earmark your non-tax mid-level exception for Beasley. I think the market for Beasley will be interesting. He's not a $6 million player. He's not a minimum player anymore. Is he a non-tax mid-level, which is at $14 million? Well, there'll be offers for him because you need, as we've said, you need shooting in the playoffs. You need shooting off your bench. Finish second and sixth man of the year. So that is kind of like your financial window. Basically, you have two choices. You have the cap space direction, but it will cost you Hardaway and Schroeder, or you can go the over the cap, which you could bring the whole group back if Beasley does not get more than the $14 million non-tax mid-level exception. Remember, there's only really one team with cap space, and that is Brooklyn. Front office priority is basically weighing your own free agents, the continuity factor. How much does continuity matter as far as with this? And certainly Beasley, Schroeder, and Hardaway is that guy. You've got two extension candidates. Last year, it was Cade Cunningham. Cunningham had all NBA language. He's going to earn all NBA. His number will go from 224 to 269. Now you've got Ivy and Doran. Two players. One was hurt in Ivy. The other finished the season strong. What number are you comfortable? I think they're worthy of extension candidates, but these two guys, it will go down to October 21st. And as we know with extension candidates, when you're not a max player, there always has to be a compromise. Ivy had leg injury. He had surgery, was having a career year. Duran played 78 games, second highest field goal percentage in the NBA. One of 5 players to record 100 doubles before turning 22. Pretty interesting. Team needs, I think a lot depends on what happens with your free agents. Certainly shooting is a priority if those guys leave. And as we said, we talked about the draft assets with having all your first round picks. They got 15 seconds, which is remarkable. That is it in a nutshell with Detroit. Be positive in Detroit. I know it's not how you want it to end, and you thought that you had a chance to get out of this series, and you certainly did, especially if you got to game 7. But compared to where you were and where you are today, there was a lot of strong momentum building for this organization. They did a heck of a job. It was fun to root for. I don't care who wins and who loses. I root for good success stories. And these guys had one of the great success stories of any team in NBA history. That is it for Detroit. We will talk soon. Have a great night. NBA on ESPN.